Okay, so today, make sure that's working. There we go. My volume was all the way down. So today I want to talk about a question that came up in our coaching group for my shift program. And it was a really good one. And there is some background around the nervous system that helps understand where this question came from. So I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. But the question in the group was, why is food a common coping mechanism when our nervous system is dysregulated? In other words, why do we reach for food specifically when we're trying to cope with things, right? Like why is that a habit for a lot of people? Because I had mentioned in the content of the course that food is one of the most common coping mechanisms for people when they have a dysregulated nervous system. And this can be common both in positive emotions and what we experience as challenging or negative emotions. So as you've probably all experienced, we use food for all kinds of reasons. We use food for happiness and joy and celebrations and excitement. And we also use food during times of stress and sadness and struggle and strain and depression. And I'm going to focus on the more sort of challenging feelings today as I answer this question. And there is some really good research that talks about this, but none that I have found, and if you know where it is, please let me know, but none that I have found that specifically addresses why food, right? This specifically addresses the pathway, the neural pathway with food and a dysregulated system. I have come across research that talks sort of around it, but not necessarily directly to the specific food pathway. But here's my suspicion with all of the research I've done and all of the books and all of the mechanisms that I'm aware of. Here's my suspicion is that in ancient times when our brain was developed, and I say ancient times, but when we're really looking at this, it's not that long ago that food was very scarce for us and access to food was scarce. And we had to develop ways to make sure that the brain was focused on getting food for energy, for survival, right? It really was a life or death thing, not that long ago, right? We're talking hundreds of years, even though we've been around for thousands of years, right? Only in the last 100+ years have we had access to grocery stores, and then even before that, agriculture and the eruption of farming and the access to that type of food was not that long ago when we talk about our evolution. So from a evolutionary biology standpoint, food has been scarce for most of the time that we have been alive. Right? So for most of the time that man has been alive, food has been scarce in some way. And our brain, from a biology standpoint, has evolved to make sure that we were focused on food and nutrition and energy and calories for survival. Fast forward to where we are now, and I think many of you have heard the concepts of the nervous system and fight or flight, and the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight system, the parasympathetic nervous system, which has two branches. One is in connection and one is in shutdown. I won't go into the nervous system today, but the point is, I think some of you have probably heard people say that our current brain structure is not able to tell the difference between the chronic stress that we experience from a biological perspective. It's not able to tell the difference between the chronic stress we experience and the acute stress that we experienced in evolutionary days when we actually had danger and we had to run from a tiger and we had to worry about poison and staying alive and freezing temperatures and predators that were always trying to eat us. Our brain, our biology does not understand the chronic stress and the acute stress, doesn't understand the difference, because to the body, it feels the same. And so as the body experiences danger in our chronic stress that we experience every day, disruption in our work situations, disruption in our relationships and our friends, stress about money, stress about jobs, stress about anything, right? To the biology, it all feels the same. It feels like danger. It feels like a threat to our survival from a biology perspective, right? Currently, our biologies have not caught up to the difference between chronic and acute stress. So to the biology, it feels the same. And when the biology got the message of danger, got the signal of danger or threat, one of the things that it immediately started to activate was a system that said, I need energy. I need fuel, right? If I don't have fuel, then I am at risk for death or dying, right? That's one of the systems it activates. Now, I won't get into the technology of it because technically when you are in the sympathetic system, your digestion, gets shut down. We don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but my suspicion and what I have read and researched is that one of the reasons that we are so prone to food as a coping mechanism, as a soothing mechanism, is because when we eat, it signals to the brain to turn down the threat response system, especially when it's a specific combination of salt, sugar, fat. That's a topic for a different day, ultra processed foods and the impact on the brain. But when we eat, we signal to the body that there might be safety, right? That we might be able to survive because now we've eaten something and we've replenished our fuel stores, right? And so our brain, in an unconscious way, is searching constantly for fuel for survival. It's always seeking out calories because calories were scarce. And so if it's getting signals of threat or danger, one of the things it's going to want to do is look at the ways to survive. And one of the ways to do that is to eat, right? And so this is an unconscious mechanism and it happens below the level of our awareness, but it is relatively ingrained, right? And so you might say, well, how do I deal with an unconscious mechanism? How would I be able to act outside of that? Well, we can do a whole lot with awareness. We can do a whole lot with bringing the unconscious conscious by becoming the observer of our behaviors when we are dysregulated. So tracking when I feel like this is the behavior that I tend to gravitate towards, we can start bringing the unconscious conscious, and then we can make different decisions around those patterns during those times. And so the more you observe your patterns of behavior, if you know that you are someone who turns to food when you are stressed, and you can track those behaviors and you can make that connection, you can then start to say, okay, when I turn to food when I am stressed, it actually ends up making me feel more stressed because I eat in a way that doesn't feel good. Then I feel in a way that doesn't make me feel good. And then that further facilitates my stress. So what are the things I can do? What are the coping strategies that I can use when I'm feeling stressed that will actually help me feel less stressed, rather than using a subconscious coping strategy just because my nervous system is telling me I'm in danger, that ends up leaving me feel more guilt and shame after I've eaten the food, right? So it's a very long-winded way, some sciencey stuff today, about saying food is a very, very common coping mechanism when you're stressed or dysregulated. So if you find yourself eating and patterns of eating in ways that aren't serving you or that you don't like or that you're frustrated with, it's a really, really good opportunity to take a look at, am I dysregulated in my system? Am I experiencing nervous system dysregulation, which is leading me to these patterns of behaviors that don't feel good? And if you don't know what nervous system dysregulation is, please reach out. I have a ton of videos. I have a ton of resources for you all to understand that better. Following me anywhere you follow me, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, I do talk a lot about these concepts, and you can start making the connection between whether or not you have a dysregulated nervous system and then whether one of the ways that you cope with that is to use food. Okay, hope that was helpful for today's healthy conversation. We'll see you all next week.